Then we go into the leg press, and this is where I know so many of you are doing this incorrectly. I'm going to be honest with you, I see this video by GainsByBrains. It says everything I did to build my dream physique, and I'm thinking bloody fantastic. Let me talk about how to develop muscle, let me talk about hypertrophy, let me talk about resistance training, and let me give you all the secret tips and tricks that shouldn't actually be that secret that will help you also build your dream physique. Then I actually watched the video and realised she doesn't actually really speak much about developing the physique per se, but it was actually more a bit of a marketing video for her new app that she's launched. We're going to ignore that, and what we're going to do is talk about the workout, what she's doing, and I'm actually going to tell you my answer and my opinion on the title of the video, which is regarding how you can build your dream physique, and I'm going to simplify it to the point where it's almost silly and unbelievable how easy it actually can be. So we're starting off with an RDL, Romanian deadlift. I love to see it. The thing with the RDL is ultimately the big thing to remember there, it's a hip hinge movement. The hips are hinging backwards, as you can see here. In doing so, what we're going to then do is lengthen both the glutes and the hamstrings depending on where the knees are looking. So if your knees are a bit more bent, then you're going to take the glutes to a greater range of motion, therefore lengthening the glutes a bit more, reducing how much emphasis is being placed on the hamstrings. If the knees are a bit straighter and the legs are a bit more locked out, emphasis actually shifts back over to the hamstrings and takes a bit away from the glutes. What we are trying to focus on in this moment is, like I said, hinging backwards. As we kick the hips back, the hamstrings and glutes are lengthening. Once the hips are no longer going back and we're actually just going down and up, the lower back's getting involved, you don't need to go that far. This is not a movement where more range of motion is better, it's more a movement where more relevant range of motion is better. One thing that's not really spoken about here is back positioning. So a lot of people have this idea that you need to have a perfectly flat back, as she does, very rightly so. Her head is looking down, so the kind of back, when I say neutral spine, we look at essentially from the tailbone all the way up to the neck. If your head is looking up like so, your spine is not neutral because again, your neck is part of your spine. Having this head in this position where the spine is neutral, fantastic, but it's not necessary. There will probably come a point where you're lifting so much weight that your upper back can no longer remain retracted and flat. So what do? Do you sacrifice hamstring and glute gains because your upper back maybe can't hold that retracted position? Or do you identify that having a rounded upper back isn't a bad thing? I'm not saying arch and hunch over like a dog going to the toilet, but I'm simply saying that a bit of back bend isn't a bad thing, provided the angle of the back remains consistent. If you start flat then bend, then flat then bend, that's probably problematic. If it's slightly bent and hunched over and that angle remains consistent throughout the entire set, you're probably fine. All I'd say is focus on driving your shoulders into your pockets. That will then obviously lock the lats in, which means you can then remain more consistent with that back angle. Tempo's good. I always say slow down, fast up. That's what it comes down to. Control the eccentric, pause at the bottom, explode through the concentric, and really try and exert as much force as possible when looking at completing the rep. Then we go into the leg press, and this is where I know so many of you are doing this incorrectly. Range of motion is important here. Don't be afraid to drop the weight just to nail range of motion. So again, it depends what you're looking at doing. If you're looking at more of a glute bias leg press, you'd want a high narrow stance, and essentially we wouldn't really need to go much beyond this depth, to be honest, because the glutes can only lengthen so much. That's fine. So for a glute bias leg press, I said this is absolutely bloody laughing. If you're looking at more of a quad bias leg press, you bring the feet down, remaining narrow obviously, but then you want to go as low as possible. When I say as low as possible, I don't mean kick yourself in the head and send your bum to the abyss. Absolutely not. What I mean is kind of get down as low as you can, provided your bum can remain in contact with the pad. If your bum is lifting off the pad, then your lower back is probably going to be having a bit of a bad time. And then we actually go into a bit of a motivational conversation about embracing change, which I want to discuss.
Your future is in your hands because no one is going to do it for you. You have the power to turn a bad moment into a good one. You know, when you don't feel like training, you go anyways, and then you feel better after.
I agree within reason. So what I mean by that, if you're having a bad day and you say, like, I really can't bother to go to the gym, but I'm going to go anyway, I respect that. That's the difference between motivation and discipline. Motivation is having that desire to do something, but that feeling doesn't really last very long. Discipline is, despite not having the desire to do something, doing it anyway because you know it will help you reach your destination. Half the time I go to the gym, I cannot be bothered. In all honesty, maybe even more than that, more than half the time, I'm like, I'm not feeling it. I'm still gonna go because I know that to achieve what I want to achieve, I need to do things I don't necessarily want to do at times. That being said, if something really bad happens to you and you're given really bad news, whatever it may be, at what point do you turn around and say, actually, you can't make that a good day? Sometimes actually you just have a bad day, and sometimes things that happen are actually just bad and there is no good behind it. Do you know what I mean? So again, it's within reason and within context.
And you know what a good year can lead to? It can lead to a good life. And it all starts with you deciding to change. Because if you change nothing, nothing changes. And every single choice that you will make moving forward, every behavior that you do, every habit that you build, it's all with the intention of allowing change in your life.
So it's an interesting one. I respect the mindset. I appreciate the mindset. At the end of the day, I do believe that we are a lot more in control of things than we might think. There are far more controllables in life than we might realize at times. I can identify when I'm having bad periods. I've spoken about this in some of my mental health videos, that sometimes actually I can decide if I'm having a bad day. I can decide if I let the bad thoughts consume me, and I can decide to do something about it and welcome change. I respect that. Would agree in that sense. It's not always that easy. Sometimes you actually can't. If you're presented with some really bad news, sometimes you cannot turn that into a good day. You cannot change what has happened, and sometimes you actually do need to feel a bit crap about what's just happened. With life, same thing. If you want to make change, you've got to be the one who creates the change. But also, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Okay, so we've got some abs. I like this. We haven't really spoken about rope crunches before, and this is a lot of people actually struggle with this movement. Fantastic movement. I love it. Two things we want to focus on here. Those hips do not move. You keep them locked in this position. They don't kick back. So this is really good. What she's doing with her back, where she's rolling the spine and she's really bending it, that's also bloody good. You've got to remember that the primary thing we're looking at doing here is reducing the distance between our sternum and our pelvis. If we maintain a flat back going through that range of motion, that distance doesn't actually change. If we roll the back and almost like roll the spine, it does change. Therefore, you're contracting the abdominal region effectively. So that's bloody good. That was actually really good technique. I'm happy with that. A movement I've seen quite a lot, a movement that not many people speak about. Do I like it? Do I dislike it? So this is almost like a bit of like a reverse frog pump per se on the Smith machine, which essentially very much works the glutes in their shortened position. I think it actually can be a thing, honestly. Provided you have the means to set it up effectively, provided you have the means to actually do it effectively, I think it could actually be a solid movement. The big thing there is obviously, like I said, the glutes being worked in their shortened position, which means this contraction at the top is key. We want to contract at the top and really shorten the glutes. All I say is make sure you can overload it effectively. A movement isn't that great if you can't actually progressively overload it very far. Doing this with just a bar, I'd probably add some weight if you're able to. But now I'm going to give you the tips and tricks I promised you. When it comes to building your dream physique, let's simplify it to a few things. If you want to gain weight, which often very much aligns with building muscle, you probably need to eat in a calorie surplus, which means you need to consume more calories than you expend. If you want to lose weight, often associated to losing fat and getting leaner, you need to eat in a calorie deficit, often expending more calories than you're consuming. Keep your protein intake high. I say at least a gram per pound of body weight, within reason depending on who you're speaking to, but that's usually a rough guideline. Water intake high. Drink enough water. A good few litres a day, why not? So those are kind of the basic nutrition things you need to follow. But then it comes to training, what do? Lift weights. Whether you want to gain weight, lose weight, build muscle, lose fat, lift weights. It really comes down to resistance training, eating more or eating less, and probably moving more as well. So going for more walks, expending more calories through daily steps. Provided you do that, you're bloody laughing. And when it comes to training, how do you simplify it? Make sure you're training each muscle at least once a week, maybe even twice a week. Let's say about 3 to 6 sets per muscle group per session, anywhere from the 5 to 30 rep range, maybe even if you wanted to, the 5 to 10 rep range, depending on how you're feeling, training 2, if not close to failure. And every week you go to the gym, do more. 1 extra rep, 1 extra kilo, whatever it may be, just do a little bit more on each movement. And no, you will not be able to progress every week, but you can try your best. I usually progress every 2 or 3 weeks, but I'll always try my best to progress weekly if I can. It really is that simple. Regarding movements and which movements to choose, that's another conversation, but all I say is find movements that feel good for you, and that's probably a good starting point. Simple, basic movements are usually key, and they're usually pretty effective too. But if you want to learn a bit more about that, you can obviously do so by having a gander down below in the description, where you can either see the links to apply to work with myself, Ryder, or Beth on a one-to-one basis, where we will coach you towards your goals and create programming, give you form analysis, and give you our numbers so we can speak on a daily basis if you want to. You can also look at the TFNL workout guides, which essentially tell you everything I'm telling you, but in much greater detail, whilst also giving you workout programs to follow for either the gym or at home. Or you've got the Train Heroic group coaching sharing platform where you can work out alongside other people within the community, following a program I've created. We can speak to each other on the message board every day. You can send, I believe, workout footage in there as well if you want, and that costs less than your Netflix subscription. So there are plenty of options if you want to look at gathering a bit more information about how you can more effectively work out towards your goals. And no, they don't have to be just building muscle. They can be anything fitness related. Turns out those are my thoughts and opinions on the video. You thought this would be a good catalyst for conversation, so let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below if you do have a moment. But until then, thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating the potentially misleading title here, which is fine because I do it too. I apologize. And thank you for tolerating the video.